I do have a question for you, Brian.
Oh,
And
snappy. We were talking about something else. No, I'm ready to get into it.
well, yeah. Well, we were talking about through lines and the things that we were
Sure.
going to talk about today, and I've actually been thinking about this for a little while because I, as you know, have for a long time been working on a unified field theory. I am looking for like a singular intelligible way of looking at the cosmos that will
Right.
explain all the stuff and that will help me to understand in order to improve my predictive model, right? Been talking about this for a long time. So I typically come at things from an animist perspective, which is to say that I think that everything is alive.
Yeah.
But then you run into this question about like, what is life?
Sure.
And so you can do the energy thing and just be like, everything. Next question. Right? But that's a deeply unsatisfying way to go about it. And so I have been thinking a lot recently about evolution. I really fuck with the theory of evolution. I don't think you're going to get past it. I feel like that's probably what is really going on out here in the
Sure.
world. And so I frequently think of the creator God form, like the creator deity, as selective pressure.
Okay.
Because selective pressure is the thing that is choosing how stuff is going to be shaped, how bodies are going to be shaped, and how cultures and societies and behaviors and all the rest of that shit is going to be shaped based on selective pressure. Does that make sense so far?
Yes, I'm going to quibble
You look like
later
you
on
wanna
about.
quibble.
No, I'll quibble later on. Get the full thing out. I got some. I'll insert this here. I think selective pressure is definitely something we need to think with. The place where I have some variations there is in thinking with the difference between selective pressure and natural selection as it is applied by most, like, not necessarily Darwin himself, but the Darwinists who came right after him, in the sense of like a randomized thing, and then pulling in some Kropotkin to talk about mutual aid and its different response to selective pressure. So selective pressure is still true, but survival of the fittest on one side and mutual aid as a method of survival on the other. I want to keep those in tension a little bit, and then later on I want to talk about Whitehead.
Sure, but both of those are responses to selective pressure.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
It's
That's why I said it was not a
competition
full
or
quibble.
cooperation, but both of those are
Right.
responses to the thing that is selective pressure. And so selective
Agreed.
pressure is going to push you into a camp, or it's going to push you into a kind of behavior or a certain body shape or
Right.
something like that. And some of them will be cooperative and some will be competitive, but all of that
Right.
comes from the place that is selective pressure. We can agree
So-
on that?
Yes, but let's one more little wibble here because it's interesting. So the Whitehead piece I would like to bring into it is the idea of process and everything in process with each other, right? So when you say selective pressure, typically that means survival as the end goal of the pressure, right? So we're talking about species survival.
Most importantly,
or
reproductive. So that I'm actually going
Reproductive
to
survival.
goal.
Yeah.
And so what I think of the goal as reproductive success, which is to say that the goal is to lodge yourself into the future as far as possible. So that means
And-
you're trying to survive, but more importantly, you're trying to survive past your own survival. And so you're trying to take a
Right.
piece of yourself, reproduce it such that it moves further into the future than you would have otherwise been able to do. That seems to me to be the goal.
And the Whitehead piece from the process theology or process philosophy stuff that I want to bring in as to hold with that is he believed that the universe had a moral arc to it, but that those morals were living is a good, living can be, it is good to be alive, and living can be better. Life can be better, right? So that the idea of like, it is good to be alive, it is good to continue living and doing what it needs to do so, it is also good to make living a better thing than it is now, to make it easier to live. Is so not just simply survival, but improvement as part of the universe's, or improvement in this case meaning lowering the odds of a bad life, right? That the odds of a good life going up are also part of that pressure, not simply pure survival. That's the only other piece I'd like to have us consider as we go forward. But yeah, I'm on track.
So that
We're on
sounds
track.
to me like a claim that he has just made. He just thinks that. And
I mean, he's
so,
got some proofs.
is there a proof
But
to
yeah.
that? Because to me, we've talked about this on the show before. But I believe very deeply in moral relativism. Now, I think that you can make a case for a kind of morality that uh, keeps you within certain boundaries because, like, you need to be able to play with all the other people and stuff like
Sure.
that. Like, so you can't just have whatever morality you want to have
Right.
and live with other people. Like, if you're going to live with other people, then you have to play nice with others and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
can get worked into a morality and that sort of stuff. But if you zoom out from that, then I think that, especially at the cosmological scale, there can be no such thing as good or bad because what's good is necessarily a relative judgment. It's a judgment that is made by the individuals in on the scene. So if you see a documentary about a bear and the bear is eating salmon, then you're like, "Yay, salmon!" If you
Right.
see a documentary about the salmon and you see that same scene, then you're horrified about what's going on.
Right.
And so it's good and bad depending on your perspective. And I feel like that is baked into the universe. So, but you're saying that Whitehead has proved that moral relativism isn't real?
No, no. He's saying that that there is a moral arc, but the only moral arc you can have is basically the things that lead to more life flourishing better are good. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the good. Is that like a successful ecosystem in which life is able to happen in an easy and good way, that's a good thing, right? Like he would say,
Still, though, that sounds like that's vibes based. Now, I'm not disagreeing with it. I like this kind of I love a
Sure.
thriving ecosystem. But
Right.
the fact that I like it doesn't make it true. It just makes it something that I like. And
well,
maybe
if
Whitehead as well.
the alternative there is that you're looking at like so what I would say in terms of selective pressure to sort of move to a different space here is that things that survive the selective pressure are good, right? Like it's good to survive the selective pressure. It's not good to die, right?
It's not good to die.
Well, it's not good to be gone, right? For annihilation, to enter the no thing, right?
Right. That's not the goal of life.
Right.
But, like I feel like you can look at the universe and be like, man, there's a lot of really inhospitable conditions out here that really don't give a fuck
Sure.
if you live or not. And
Although-
you don't even have to leave the earth for that. But then you can leave
Well-
the earth and it gets real ugly real quick.
Possibly. So if we take a look at like Jupiter, for example, like we don't want to live on Jupiter. The conditions on Jupiter are pretty shitty as far as human life is concerned. There may or may not be other kinds of life on Jupiter. You know what I mean? But like in terms of stuff we would
Depends on
traditionally
your
recognize
definition
as
of
life.
life, which is why I'm
Yeah, we're
concerned
going to get
about
there. Yeah. But like, in terms of what we see as human life or Earth life, bio life, right? Like Gaia life, we don't see that on Jupiter. We're not aware of it existing. But without Jupiter's gigantic, noxious shape and its gravitational pulls and everything else, all life on Earth would have been destroyed a long time ago because it protects us from a
Death.
shit ton of comets. So,
Death.
like, that works into a system of creating life. Now, I think Whitehead also sees life as existing in Jupiter itself. Like, there's a very, like, animist style thinking. Like, Jupiter itself is alive. So, at that point, it
Yeah, and
you
I've
know,
made
it
the case
doesn't,
that the sun is alive before.
which I think holds up, right? Because the sun can die as well,
Sure. Fair enough.
and will die. Like,
Sure. Yeah, if you see life as an opposite of death, then
or at least I think life incorporates death, right? Like, in order to be alive, to me, you have the possibility to die, right? Like that's
Okay.
part of how I
Sure.
understand. That's a part of the life thing.
Sure.
Anyway, I think we're on the same thing. The only thing here that I like from Whitehead that I wanted to bring in is that mere survival may not be all that selective pressure is trying to get us to. It may also be trying to push us to create conditions under which life can more easily flourish, right? Like might not be just survival. It might be a little bit. It might also be improvement.
Okay. I'm not sure that I buy that, but
It's fine. That's the only quibble.
fair enough. You know,
Continue with the rest of your initial statement, though, because we took a little side bet, but I do want to hear the rest of your initial
Sure.
layout.
Yeah. I knew we were going to quibble about definitions immediately, more or less.
That's what we do.
Yeah, totally. But so I have been thinking of life as the thing that is trying to achieve the goal. And so
Okay.
the goal is to push yourself into the future as far as possible. And so that's going to be survival and reproduction mostly. And so that's how you push yourself into the future. So life is the thing that is trying to do that and is experiencing hardship via selective pressure and is changing its own shape in order to meet the demands that the goal of getting into the future makes in the face of selective pressure.
Okay. When you say myself getting into the future, what do you mean by myself getting into the future?
Sure, the self is an illusion. So
No, I mean I'm not trying to be too Buddhist bullshit on this. Like, but I mean, like for just determining what we're talking about, though, like, is it only my genetic material? Is my genetic material also contain part of my spirit? Does like you see what I mean? Like, what if I write a good book that's around in 100,000 years, but all my progeny have died? Have I succeeded in my response
Sure.
to environmental? Like how do you
Yeah.
understand what I'm attempting to project, or what we are pretending to project?
And indeed, yeah. Shout out to your boy Gilgamesh.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah, he's
this is-
still kicking it.
yeah, been struggling with this for a long time. Gilgamesh did not survive, and yet here I am talking about Gilgamesh. Maybe
Talking
he
about
did
Gilgamesh.
survive, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that to me seems like a very legitimate way of lodging oneself in
I
the
agree.
future.
It does seem like a win. Yeah.
And I don't think that is so. What I really like about the theory of evolution is it's so simple that it's like lodge yourself into the future. Okay, go play.
Right.
Figure out
Yeah.
how to do that. That's up to you to figure out how to do. And so if you can get your genetic material into the future, great. That counts. Good job. You did it.
Sure. Yeah.
Or if you can write a story, like before that time, like no one had done that.
No.
Had before Gilgamesh, no one had written the story that would last for what is this, like 4,000 years or something like this?
Yeah.
Like, so he developed a new way to meet the evolutionary demand, which is to lodge yourself in the future. But it doesn't matter if it does matter in the sense that he met the goal, and that's all that matters. How you
Right.
do it doesn't matter.
Well, and this is why animism, and then also stuff like the multiple souls or spirits ideas that the Egyptians had, stuff like this, like all work really well inside a selective pressure framework, right? So to some extent, like this body is a sign that my ancestors made it. You know what I mean? Like they got here. I'm here. They got here. But by the same token, some of the things that my ancestors taught that are more of like a spirit concept or a family concept, like I can look back and see that these same lessons have been passed for an incredibly, we have documentation that I'm like, this has clearly been passed on for about 200, 300 years. That spirit idea, that story has transmitted itself, maybe connected to genetic material, maybe not. It kind of has its own independence because, we have told each other stories that have affected each other. And were one of us to go, the stories that we have engaged and shared with each other would go with the other person and then be passed in other ways too. Like the unitary self is less interesting, or the atomic self is less interesting than the relating self, or the relating thing that exists between the two of us. So, you know, if we're composed of a bunch of different things, right, that are coming together to try to survive, like we're a fucking hive of spirits that are trying to get into the future. You know what I mean? Like, or to keep going at a minimum. And so that, I think that that makes, you know, and I mentioned the Egyptian stuff. I just mean like the physical spirit, the story spirit, the spirit that goes back to the stars, like the thing that is reborn. Like all of these, I think work really well with the selective pressure framework in a way that, like, you know, some more limited views of the soul or the body or whatever don't work quite as well, like in the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I love that Terrence McKenna quote. If it's real, then it can take the pressure.
Right.
And so, any of your spiritual frameworks that fall down in the face of the theory of evolution are not gonna work. They're just not gonna. They don't. If they can't take the pressure, then they can't be real. You know.
So that's, if you don't mind a quick detour, this is an interesting idea. What do you think about like dead religions?
What do I think about dead religions?
Like
We
they didn't
talked a
make
little
it.
bit about this last time because all the
Saturn.
Indians died. Saturn, sure.
Although I had another thought with that. By the way, I've been reading a book by Stephen Graham Jones, who's a Blackfoot
Okay.
writer. I'm reading this book called Buffalo Hunter Hunter, and it's a vampire story about a, you know, Blackfoot who gets churned into a vampire, and there's lots of stuff that goes on, and it is, but he begins hunting the buffalo hunters, right? And it's a crazy story. It's a great story. It's full of, you know, as a Blackfoot, he's put a bunch of Blackfoot thinking into the story. And, you know, it's been read by, I don't know, like, it's been purchased by like 15 million people.
Sure.
You know, like, again, this is not a justification or like, to, you know, one of those things where you're like, so sorry a Holocaust happened to you, you know, but like your story got everywhere, you know, but it is a point about how some of those things can survive under selective pressure, right? Like the pressure of a sort of vicious occupation. They managed to sort of tell a lot of their stories again through this person who came out of that culture and managed to convince a bunch of other people to take that story in, right? Like to take that with them. So it's an interesting,
For sure. Yeah. Okay.
example.
So you're making the point there that Indian religion is not dead
Not yet. No,
and is
no, I would say
therefore
not yet.
a poor example of dead religions. Is that
Probably, yeah. I would actually say that like one that, because the problem is we have to know what it is, right? So like it's
right?
already kind of limited. It might be a little bit alive because we know it exists,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like if so, for example, like if you wanted to join the cult of Mithras, right, from the Roman tradition, right?
Sure.
We don't really know what they were up to. As a mystery school religion, we have some ideas
Sure.
about it. We don't really know.
Pythagoreans or something like this.
Yeah, exactly, like that kind of stuff. And like we can now, if you wanted to contact Mithras, this is my question here. Like, does that spirit live outside of the context of the mystery cult that that worshipped him? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. So there's a question there about the aliveness of ideas, like how alive is an idea, and so you know there you could conceivably have an idea that dies with the people
sure.
and then surfaces again later in another group of people or in another place or time or something like that because that's how ideas do, or because, you know, especially like if it's real, then it can take the pressure. And
Right.
if it's taking the pressure, then somebody will think of it at some point.
Right.
Somebody will clock what's going on because I guess you have to posit this that the world is consistent, like the world is doing the same thing that the world is just does all the time.
That's a bigger thing. That's a bigger thing than it seems on the surface there, isn't it? But like I
Yeah,
do think I don't think it's not wrong though. Like
yeah. Well,
yeah.
it is a response to Descartes. I don't fuck with Descartes. So Descartes
No.
is on the like I can't prove that anything is real train,
Yeah.
and that's true. You can't prove that anything is real, but I think that is dumb because I I think that the proof is in the pudding. So it's like I personally have evolved eyes
Sure.
over billions of years or however long it took for an eye
I
to
don't know, man,
develop.
but these things are pretty fancy. Yeah.
They're so fucking fancy and they do a great job taking light from the outside world and putting it into and turning it into information that is intelligible and actionable. So
Yeah.
that, to my mind, even though I can't prove that that is all of the information that is contained in light, and in fact, we have proven that it is nowhere near all of
Nowhere
the
near.
information that
Yeah.
is contained in light. But I don't think the fact that it is not all of the information contained in light proves that the information that we do get from light is not real. I think
Right.
that it is a slice of the pie and not the whole pie. And that's why I have a whole fucking religion around mysteries. That's
Right.
like, maybe you should ask a question instead of having tried to pretend like you have all the answers because it's impossible, right? So the fact that something has evolved to take in information over so long, it's the persistence of it that makes it seem like it's real to me. And
Yeah.
so that is different than Descartes, who would be like, "Well, are you sure you're not a butterfly dreaming this whole thing?"
Sure.
And
I mean, it's really we've talked about it before, but it's real the moment I realized that Descartes was drinking 19 cups of coffee a day when he was writing his shit, I was like, okay. I know all I need to know about why he got to the point where he's like, I'm only thoughts. This is all I can do. Like, yeah,
Sure.
man. You
Yeah,
drink
totally.
enough coffee, it sure
I've
fuck
had
feels
days like
that
that.
way. Yeah.
Totally.
And then you have a question of like, is that coffee spirit talking through Descartes? Like, is it just like,
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know? No, I agree that the realness of ideas or this thing is interesting. So let's take for a second. So if it's real, it can take the pressure. I think also has something to do, and I'm going to go into one of the areas I think you're really good at. So you get to play nicely here. Is shape, right? So if we take for a second Plato and the idea of the Platonic solids, right? There are these shapes that he uses to represent the elements. Don't worry too much about that piece. He's like, you can imagine these shapes that are sort of perfect that exist, right? For you, when we talk about the death of an idea or the recurrence of an idea, is there a, Akashic record? Is there an eternal library? Is there a universe of forms from which we all manifest? Right? Do these ideas live independent of us? And that's why they're constantly re-expressed. We sort of remember them. We come back to them. Or are they co-created through our responses to select? You know what I mean? Like, are they constantly manifesting? Like, or is there a difference actually between the two, or is it just terminology? Like,
The way that I would conceptualize that is, okay, so if there is a kind of pressure, then that's going to push you in some kind of direction. So, the eye evolved because there was an environment that was replete with light, and the ones who figured out how to turn that light into useful information survived better. And so, and then there was an arms race about that. It was like, oh, yo, we got to figure out what's going on with this light. This is amazing. We can do so much shit with this, right? And so, then okay, so let's imagine that the world is destroyed, or we're 10 billion years in the future, and the sun has died, and all this, right? And then there's another planet somewhere that has hospitable conditions that is also replete with light. I think in that space, it is very likely that organisms will be like, yo, light is amazing and we can do a lot with this, and go on a similar path that would, and so it would evolve something that was, if it had exactly the same pressures, if it had exactly the same conditions, then it would evolve in exactly the same way. And it would only depart from the way that it has evolved insofar as conditions depart.
Let me ask you a really dumb question. Why don't trees have eyes?
Why don't trees have eyes? Well, it seems to me that eyes are important for animals because motion is the most important part of an animal's lifestyle. Whereas, and so you need to be able to detect predators and move out of the way of them. And you need to be able to detect prey and move toward that. And you need to be able to move around obstacles and stuff like that. These are these are pressures that trees don't deal with. Trees are obstacles. They don't have to navigate obstacles in the same way.
I find it interesting that in an environment, in a light-rich environment, right, that requires that gives an advantage to dealing with sunlight in various ways. You have a mobile solution, eyes, and you have a stationary solution of food, chlorophyll, all this sort of stuff. And that, like, so it's interesting to try to figure out. And I think because we talk about this a lot, or I talk about this anyway, in terms of story selection, or which pressures you're responding to, or what you want to do, it's good to know if you're a tree or a cow, right? Like,
Sure.
both have needs related to living in a light replete environment, but they handle it very different ways, in part because of some natural gifts they have, like their starting point causes them to respond to different things. But they're facing the key difference in their response to the pressure or the environment, at least that they're in, of sunlight rich environment, is motion. There's probably something else biologists are screaming about, but for you and me, like, motion is clearly something that's different between the two. And so if you're mobile and not well armored, right, you need to be able to take a look around.
Or you need you could bring up bats in echolocation, and that's fine. You need a way.
Yeah, but they're in the
to be able to
dark.
move
They don't
around.
fucking know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They're not in a light-rich environment.
Right. But so it's always multiple pressures present in one
time.
space. Yeah. That creates the differences. But yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about how long trees were here before we were here. And you know what I mean? Like, yeah. They're still doing good. they're winning.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, plants do a great job living. They really figured that shit out.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, there is so much sunlight. What if I just ate that?
Yeah.
And it seems to be going marvelously for them.
We're like, well, good for you. I have to go find a beaver and eat that. Like, great.
Yeah. Well, I got to eat you, Ultimately, we all eat the sunlight. But
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So my claim here is that the world is real, and that that life is the thing that has the goal of lodging itself further into the future by any means necessary.
Sure.
And sometimes that's going to be competitive, and sometimes it's going to be cooperative, and sometimes it's going to be genetic, and sometimes it's going to be story, and sometimes it's going to be all kinds of different ways. But that is the thing that life is trying to do. So then, this leads me back to this point around animism, where it's like, okay, everything is alive. I don't know that everything is trying to lodge itself in the future.
This gets to the are the rocks alive? Kind of animism
You
question.
see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Yes. Or the sun,
Yeah.
like,
Oh shit! Who was it? Who I was just listening to? Who was saying the answer wasn't like, are these rocks alive? Are some of these rocks not alive? Maybe this is a Rune Rasmussen thing, but he's like, the answer the translation's kind of wrong when they ask the elder, like they do this famous story and they ask the elder, like, are the rocks alive? And it's like, some of them. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was Rune Rasmussen, because he was like, probably a better question was, can these rocks be alive? Right? Do these rocks have the potential to be alive? Which is an interesting way to think with that. Like, what then would make it alive or not? And it's like, well, does this rock want to exist in the future? Right? Like, is a good question of like, how's that working? And that's why we have AI, because rocks want to live in the future.
okay, fair enough.
But or at least some rocks do.
Some of
right?
them do.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, but let's bite on the bigger question here too of like, what do you think is not alive?
Well, I'm not sure,
Sure.
because rocks are a great example. It's like, okay, well, I'm not sure how to measure what a rock does or doesn't want. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's a good angle to at least investigate, which is if you drop something and it moves toward the center of the earth, that we could consider that it wants to go to the center of the earth.
Or gravity wants to pull it there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, gravity is it wanting to go to the center of the earth.
well, how much? Yeah. So at that point, we're talking about. Yeah. So is gravity?
So I maybe should point out here that I also posit that basically the whole thing is automatic.
Sure.
So I
But like,
think of all life as automata. I think of humans as automata.
oh yeah, I forgot you do this. Yeah.
right? Yeah, we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
and you didn't buy it then, and it seems like you're not
No.
going to buy it today.
No.
But
But I'm here for you to have this opinion.
yeah, I can't imagine another way for it to be. It's the same idea as where do the ideas come from? Well, the ideas come from conditions. So if you have this condition, and then the idea sort of erupts or emerges in that space, and we could think of an idea as an emergent phenomenon. And so if you were to have these identical conditions in another place, then we would expect that idea to again emerge in that space
Yeah.
because conditions have made it so. And conditions being as they are, we could think of conditions as a set of shapes,
Yeah.
which give you a kind of outcome. So it's just water flowing down the thing. And water is going to flow down the thing because that's the way that it's shaped, and these are the conditions present, and that's what water does. And so, because it's this way, then it goes that way. So, because I think that, then I think that that's also what's happening inside of our bodies and in all of the places. And so, that is the mechanism that drives all of everything. So everything is automatic.
So the way I would say that too is, so like geomancy thinks a lot about this sort of stuff. The different shape patterns that exist, the different combinatorial patterns that exist. And I would also say that in sort of that process philosophy kind of thinking, the system, the related pieces, the different pieces come together and the relation they create, the pattern they create, that's the more important thing, is the pattern rather than the individual pieces. right? And so certain kinds of interactions, certain kind of relating patterns are going to produce the same patterns. Like these things are going to relive again and again because they're certain arrangements will or shapes will create the same kind of patterns and that kind of stuff. Where I differ is that I think there's a somewhat a volitional capacity in deciding to join a shape or not, right? That you can reject a shape. I do think that being in a shape produces certain outcomes that you can be aware of, and it sort of depends on how micro or macro you want to get with this stuff, right? Like doing these things inside these conditions, you're going to get this kind of a result. So do you want to do that? Is a question that I think is a really useful one as a sort of like fortune teller, right? Like these are the conditions you find yourself in. You can do a couple things here and they will have those responses. Now, the fact that there's like, realistically there's a finite number of responses to any given situation. You can incorporate that and say that like, well, that still keeps you up as an automata because there's still only so many choices you can make inside a set thing. It's free range, totalitarianism, right? Like it's
Sure.
But I think that the ability to choose between those different shapes is what makes us not automata, makes us co-creators, that we are participating in the relations that are created. We help to create the shapes.
That's so funny. I completely agree that co-creation is what's going on, and the choice to do the thing is what co-creates. But I still don't think that the choice is a real thing.
Sure,
Like
and this is the difference there, which is why it's always fun to get here. But to take the rock going to the center of the earth, though, for a second.
Sure.
So where is the volitional moment there for you, or is it just completely absent in terms of determining life? So you're saying that for
I
life,
don't think desire is volitional very much at all. Like,
okay.
So and I think like you can see that in sexuality, for example. You know what I mean? Like Dick likes what the dick likes, and you don't get to choose what that is necessarily.
You can condition it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Right. You can like push things in this direction or that direction, but like, there's obligate homosexuality is a real thing. You know what I mean?
Sure. At least for some folks. I think a lot of people are a little more fluid than they want to admit. Like they could, but that's just the bisexual in me, presuming that everybody else is bisexual.
Bisexuals love saying that shit.
We do. One of my favorite like bisexual tropes is like sitting weirdly on a chair, having 14 drinks in your hand at the same time, and being like, "Everybody's bisexual, right?" It's like, no, not everywhere is. Did you see anybody else here sitting weird on a chair, holding too many drinks? No, that's you. But in terms of the rock wanting to get to the center of the earth, right? The question I have is like, is it responding to gravity? Right? Or is gravity working on it in a way that it cannot respond to? Right? Does it want to go to the center of the earth? Or is gravity itself a selective pressure? Right? That it doesn't necessarily get a response to?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so where do we determine life there? Right? Because, life is trying to project itself into the future. Right?
Far as I don't know. I'm working that out right now.
I know, but I'm going to take that. So the trying to seems to imply at least a certain kind of desire path, right? I wish to be in the future. Yeah. I think it's quite possible the rock could be wanting to go to the center of the earth and engage in some kind of rock ceremony that will end up in it getting into the future. It's entirely possible.
Well, it might also want something that it doesn't know will also destroy it or would be bad for it in whatever way, Like I want to do drugs, but I probably shouldn't at a certain point, you know what I mean?
It does call into question. I wasn't going to talk about it. I said I wasn't going to talk about it. Now I'm going to talk about it. All right. I watched some of this clavicular interview.
Sure, you did say that.
Yeah, and I was gonna dodge it because it was just dumb mostly. Um, but there was an interesting moment in it that is relevant here. So all those looks maxing guys, all the pickup artist bullshit, like all this kind of nonsense is ostensibly about projecting into the future, right? Like you're trying to make yourself look better so people treat you better, so you get into the future in a better, like you can sort of see that argument that that's how you do things. However, when asked, like, if that was why he was doing this stuff, if the purpose of this was his ascension into, the future, he was like, yeah, I don't know if spending time with, like, trying to actually, like, create a future is worth it. He's like, I'm not sure there's a return there. And I'm like, well, this is just a very deeply damaged individual, right? Like, there's a lot here that's clearly not healthy. But it was his desire to his initial desire to be wanted, right? To be seen as being attractive, to gain whatever bonuses come from being physically attractive, which I would say tend to push us towards putting our genetic material into the future, right? That tends to be what we work with attractiveness on. Had become something that instead was an obsession, right? He no longer wanted to project himself in the future. He no longer cared about that. He only wanted to achieve an abstract ideal of physical harmony, right? That's there. So it's interesting to see that's it. Drugs, in this case, literal drugs. Like he's taking a shit ton of drugs, right? Although very down on like alcohol or weed or any of this kind of stuff, because those would force him to interact with other human beings, which he doesn't want to do. That his desire became twisted in a way that sort of is now, I would say, anti-life by your definition of life. Like the things he's doing are designed to not project him into the future anymore. And it's interesting how, yeah.
Well, that's one of the funny things about the evolutionary mechanics is that they can be hijacked, like drugs is a great example of that, or video games, or social media and doom scrolling and all this sort of stuff sort of like hijacks the systems that evolved that were the things that would get you up and move you toward goals that would lodge you into the future. Like we don't need to think. We don't need to have the conscious thought, oh, I want to get into the future in order to be operating in such a way that that's what actually happens, And so, but you had your gotcha face on. Where'd you get
Yeah, no, because now we're talking about demons and how demons are part of the selective pressure system. So do you think that doom scrolling, right, the internet, or social media in this function, basically is a selective pressure system to weed out people who can't resist temptation?
That's an interesting. I've heard a couple of people make that point before, I've heard people make the point that is what's going to be next. Like that's going to be the way that people distinguish themselves in order to make themselves more attractive or more competitive or whatever. Is demonstrating an ability to resist the allure of internet traps.
Sure.
And sure, yeah, maybe, I guess so. There's
one strategy.
It is, yeah, well, and that's one dimension of an extremely complicated future that has pressures, the selective pressure has always come from every direction. And now I think that we're in an unprecedented moment in so many different arenas that it's any one vector is not going to give you the whole story here.
No.
So, but I think that that's if you're telling people at home to learn how to meditate in order to be more competitive in the landscape that we're coming into, I think that you will be correct.
Yeah, I am. And I enjoyed the meme you sent me this week of everybody pointing at you and going, meditate. And the entire universe trying to tell you to fucking meditate. And it's making me think of the function of temptation, right? And the idea of
It's
demons.
giving snake.
It's giving snake. It's giving. I don't know. I don't know why I'd
It's
be thinking about
giving adversary.
that. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I'm constantly thinking about this right now. But it is. If we think about one of the good exercises, I think, for magicians is to get out of the good evil paradigm, right? As it is handed to you. I think that's a very important thing to do. To either come up with your own understanding of what is good, or to just step it aside from it. It's not the traditional dichotomy is not useful, really. And in a natural setting, or the idea of sort of ecosystemic things, everything has a place in the ecosystem. Things are polluted or not useful when they're out of their proper place in the ecosystem. So a demon, a spirit, is good and useful when it's doing what it's supposed to do in the system, and is a pain in the ass when it's in the wrong spot, right? I've been thinking recently about something that the devil taught me early on, which was like, there are times when you're supposed to say no to things, you know, and that is its own kind of selective pressure to be offered things you think you want, or that trigger you immediately to be like, "Ooh, yes, I do want that." And it's like, do you want that, or is that actually an obstacle to what you really want, right? Like, is this a, you know? And so when I think about like doom scrolling, or I think about this kind of stuff, there is a kind of selective pressure demon, if we want to think about it that way for a second, that's like, yeah, let that dopamine hit. Give up everything. That's what it's for, right? Just fucking feel that dopamine hit. And if you give into that, you do lose a fair amount of life. You know, there are people who do social media great. They make really cool shit. You know what I mean? They share it with people. They make the world better. Everybody looks at their stuff and laughs, feels joy, feels pleasure. Like, you know, I think that stuff's great. You know, I personally needed to get into long form content, or my brain was going to rot, because I was going to sit there all day and just fucking thumb scroll, you know, like, and my chance of getting my genetic material and or my spirit into the future was diminishing rapidly by that activity. So, but dealing with that made me better, right? It made me want to dive more into the writing, more into the reading. Like the confrontation with this particular temptation strengthened me as a person overall. Or at least I tell myself that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to know what any of the other decisions would have yielded, you know, but if I can be pleased with the way that this one turned out, then we'll call that a win.
Right. If I feel that on average I'm moving in a good direction, you know what I mean? Like, reasonably happy, things are working okay, healthy, things are moving in the right, you know, I tend to think that I'm on the path in that way. Like, it's, you know, I don't know, but there's lots of artists who died crazy and penniless who their names are still known and their work is still loved. So
totally. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it'll be me one day. Brian, thanks for getting in here into this philosophical nothing burger. Everybody who
I think
lasted this long, I appreciate y'all for making it this long while I just like flounder in these dark waters of confusion. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Wait. Before we round up, because I feel it, but I want to ask you a question that I think is important here. Whether or not we're automata, whether or not we're fallen in the shapes and stuff, how does thinking this way, how does being in this spirit of thinking of selective pressure and thinking of this stuff, how does that help you in your quest? How does that make you feel in your life, right? Like,
sure.
What does it do for you?
The reason why I'm doing this in the first place is because I think that the most important question that you can ask is, what is it? Like, just when we're in the world, what is it? What even am the world, you know?
Yeah.
Because intelligence is the kind of universal improvement matrix. It's the thing that
Yeah.
makes everything better. So you can improve basically every aspect of your life by being more intelligent. And so I define intelligence correctly, I might add, as an ability to anticipate the future. So anything can do that. Plants can do that. Animals can do that. Now robots can do that. If you correctly anticipate the future, then you are smart. If you don't, then you are not. It's pretty simple that way. And so in order to correctly anticipate the future, or in order to correctly anticipate outcomes, you need to know what the world is. You need to know how the world works. How does this whole thing happen in order to project into the future and be like, okay, I think that's going to go. If it, given these conditions, I think it's going to come out like this. And so I spend a lot of time, I've made my job to predict the future,
Right.
not only because I think that it's a cool, fun thing to be smart and whatever, but because I am an astrologer and a fortune teller. And so what I do is I predict the future. And in order to predict the future well, then I need to know what the world is made of, or what the how the world is shaped, or something like that. And so I'm just waiting around trying to figure out that. The whole point of getting a unified field theory is so that I can be more effective in the world.
Is what do you think thinking with evolutionary stuff like in the last couple weeks, is there something it has changed or called to light for you in your life? Is there something where it's like, oh, I think maybe I can do things differently, or I want to try this, or I want to try this thing out, or I want to take this perspective on some stuff that I'm doing. For example, one of the things, like my day job is not working in a salt mine by any stretch of the imagination, but currently takes a lot of attention and it takes a lot of time, and it takes things away from other places I would like to spend my time. Right, but I have been taking some solace in the fact that in a time of some uncertainty, my progeny can be fed, my goals can be moved towards in an active way, right? Like I can get myself freer, I can improve my odds of long-term survival as far as I see the future working, right? So it has taken some of the burden off of what could be a tiresome task, to see it as part of that strategy of pushing back against selective pressure or adapting to selective pressure, opening up my options for that. Does this philosophy of thinking, does this do similar things for you? Do you think about it that way, or do you just use it in a different fashion altogether?
Like, is it making my life better to,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Well, it's hard to say exactly because it's hard to say what my life would be like without it.
sure.
But I do, I think that I get better health outcomes if
Mm,
I keep an eye on evolutionary stuff. Like
yeah,
if we think about, you know, evolutionary ideals, or the way that the human body was developed in an ancestral environment, then that can shed good light on how I, not in an ancestral environment, can
right.
live, in order what kinds of things I can eat, or how I can behave in other ways that can sort of improve my health and health outcomes. So I do think that that is a good vector, a good, like, clear way to think with that. I also just think that, when I'm trying to predict how people are going to decide to do things, or not necessarily just people, but also animals, and
Right.
like when I'm trying to predict those kinds of outcomes, then keeping an evolutionary model is a great tool. I think I do get better outcomes than I would if I didn't have that as the basic tool in the box.
I got a story for you. Let me know how you would interpret this. So I've started going for runs on a much more regular basis because I have some desires to put myself into the future. in a very straightforward way. And I had this nice little run through the back end of Vassar College and this little sort of low-lying creek area. There's a bunch of geese. I always see a bunch of animals, everything else there. And I know we're getting close to laying season, and the geese are getting a little more territorial. So I try to give them some room, try not to get in their shit, Because if you haven't encountered a goose that's angry at you, they can fuck you up. It's not a joke. They can break your arm, they can mess you up. There's this breeding pair that I've been keeping an eye on that's likes to hang out right where I run. And I was running and I was talking on the phone and I could see them kind of heading towards the water, and I'm between them and the water. And I had room, you know what I mean? I was going to pass them very politely, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Goose, and continue on. But Mr. Goose decided that I had come too close to his lady, and he was about to engage in some evolutionary activity of his own to prove his worthiness as a male in this situation. And he went into full V shape, head down, snake head out, mouth open, tongue going, charge time. And I was like, whoa. Now, what I did was say, I'm sorry. I started apologizing, backing up. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not causing any trouble here. You're the boss, whatever. Backed up far enough that he kind of was like, okay. That's far enough. His lady went in the water. He went in the water after her. She was kind of like, come on. You showed how big you are. You made that human bear run backwards. Good job. But that was a choice about evolution in a social context, because that is not my instinct. My instinct was, oh, I guess we're about to punch a goose.
Sure.
I don't have a fight response that's healthy. I have a very strong fight response. Now, my first thought literally was, I guess I'm going to punch a goose in the face today. Now, I don't think that's a good long-term strategy. Not so much because I couldn't punch the goose in the face. I'm pretty sure I could have punched that goose in the face. I'm relatively sure I would have won. Relatively. But what I didn't
Even
want
when the
was
goose fucks you up, you're probably going to win. You're just going to
yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm big, What I didn't want was any of the other humans that were nearby to see me punching a goose.
Sure.
And becoming the guy who punches geese.
Right.
As a rep, you know what I mean? The social evolution for there. So I like to think that evolution helped my thoughts here, but this is teach me, Sensei. Should I have punched the goose?
No, I think that you have explained it really well. Humans have evolved in a social context. We care very deeply what other people think. That's what they say about the whites of our eyes. We care. We have whites in our eyes so that we can see where people are looking.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Mine are kind of small. I'm trying to hide.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, yours are small, but you're not like a lot of other mammals will just have dark eyes. The whole thing will just be dark. And so and they don't care about where each other are looking, but we have developed because we care very deeply about where That's eyes are looking. And
I had legitimately not thought about that before. That's really cool. Yeah.
Word. Yeah. So the idea that we care very deeply about what other people think about us has strong evolutionary basis, and I think you've done well for yourself. Good job.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Good. Next time, I'll make sure to keep not punching geese. That's
Now, that's not what I said. Don't punch geese when you run the risk of gaining the reputation of being a goose puncher.
Exactly.
However, if you had been with your lady, and then the geese started charging, now there's a different kind of social dynamic. I care very much about what this lady thinks of me, and if that means that I got to punch this goose, then I got to fucking punch this goose.
I got to punch this. Yeah, and me and Mr. Goose are going to have at it. Whereas we kind of had today, we had a little mutual aid sort of situation where we were just kind of both thanks. You know what I mean? We did each other a solid. No human ladies were mad at me. No goose ladies were mad at him.
Right.
We had a good deal going. That's mutual aid. Yeah. The no, I. But you don't have to read Kropotkin now. This is all figured. But but I do think the point you made there is actually one that I would love to leave people with, or like sort of concretize our discussion on, of like it does require nuance and understanding the related capacity of what story you're in. Right? Mm-hmm. Are you in protect your beloved story, or are you in I don't need to be punching geese, because I'm making a statement about how I relate to other people and how I maintain the social contract. Like
totally
knowing where you're at makes a big difference. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Because
say more about that.
Well, in the event of PTSD, then you have misidentified which story you're in. So it brings you back to that one story, that one time when that thing happened, and like I really had to punch the goose that time because that was a horrifying situation. Whereas now every time I see a goose, then I feel like I have to punch that motherfucker. But like maybe there are other situations where I can just be like, okay, maybe I don't need to punch this one. Or that's a hypothetical, but one time I was
only
swarmed.
Barely.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. It's a. I don't know what your history with geese is, and if you have a PTSD situation that
No, but this is not my first goose encounter. I'll be honest. It's not my number one. But anyway, you were going to tell a story, triggered. Please. Tell your story.
One time I was in Costa Rica and I got swarmed by bees who tried to kill me. I do believe that those bees would have killed me if I hadn't gotten up and run and jumped in some water. But so they attacked both me and my jungle wife, and I thought that was really interesting because after the fact, I still think that bees are delightful, and so. Right. I just think that they're the sweetest ever, and I just love bees so much. I think they're so sweet and wise, and I just love bees. And now, every time she hears some buzzing, doesn't even have to be a bee. As if she hears some wings flapping like that, then she freaks out and wants to run away. And it's because she thinks that she is being swarmed again. She thinks she's in that space, in that narrative, whereas I have not married to that narrative.
Right.
Every time I hear some buzzing, and the buzzing was super intense. There was they got stuck in my hair a couple of times, and so they were like bees just like stinging the side of my head and like right next and freaking out right next to my ears. So it was a horrifying buzz situation, totally. Yeah. But I just love bees anyway.
Well, it's interesting then to think with like. There is a certain amount of like ability to keep moving, ability to continue moving forward, to not get stuck, like getting stuck either in a doom scroll trap or a PTSD situation seems to produce less good outcomes, for you, like generally speaking, like, or limit your capacity.
You just need to be able to stay fluid and dynamic and be able to legitimately recognize what's coming in, the information that's coming in. Some of the information might be some of the same information as the horrifying moment was. Like a buzz sound was present in both of these things. But there's also other information. Like that day, there was a whole cloud of them and they were buzzing in a very particular way and they were stabbing me, which is different from just every time a bee shows up.
Right. And, I think sometimes about like what is healing, right? And a lot of times it's to make whole or to make sure you're not stuck or to make sure you're able to continue moving in these kind of ways. It's interesting to think about a ability to restore a dynamic state as the nature of how things are healed, but really continue, you know what I mean? Like have returned to growing, have returned to changing.
Flow.
Get back into flow.
Always. Yeah. We always need to use a flow model when we're trying to figure out what the world is. And if we think of the world, the universe, the one verse, then it is wholeness is its nature, but also dynamism is its nature, and so it is continuously flowing.
Yeah, this is the great Tai Chi thing, the motion and stillness. You know. Well, on that, I should probably,
Cool.
I should probably head to bed.
We're glad that we figured it out.
Yeah, it's all good now.
Beautiful people at home, thank you so much for being here for this hour and a half or however long that was. Super appreciate y'all showing out and being in the comment section. Super fun to hear from you. You can go to zambonifong.com and you can get an astrology reading. You can go to wilkinsbryan.com and you can get a geomancy reading. If you want other things, sorry. No, that's not true at all. You can also get courses. And Brian, do you teach your website? Do you have lectures and stuff on there?
Sometime in the future, not currently, but we're gonna maybe have a little bit of stuff rolling in there pretty soon. So
okay, yeah, in life you can do these kinds of things, and yeah, super appreciate it. All y'all appreciate it. Look forward to seeing y'all next time. Bye, everybody.